Behind! Dadgummit, let's go, huh? Let's go.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Week 4 recap episode of the Bolts and Colts podcast. This is Brian Latendry here, and I'm actually flying solo today. Brian Riley is not with me, so this episode will be a little bit shorter, but we wanted to make sure that we got an episode up this week because there's so much to talk about, especially on the Chargers side of the football. And so, as we normally do, I'm going to jump right into the recap of last weekend's games, and we're going to start with the Colts game because the Colts, by looking at the score, they won, 19-11 against the Chicago Bears. That doesn't look like maybe a super exciting game to watch, or it doesn't look like, it was a real fun game. But that game was really where the Colts offense was tested more so than they've been tested all year in terms of playing against a very aggressive defense, a very good defense. And if you look at the stat sheet, Phillip Rivers, 16 of 29 for 190 yards and a touchdown, maybe doesn't seem like the best day until you realize that he was putting up those numbers against the Chicago Bears defense. And they pulled the game out 19-11. It was a very strong test for them. And I think the story of the day, in addition to being how the offense managed to put up enough points to win against a very good defense, was that the best defense on the field last week in that game was the Colts defense. The Colts defense allowed only 269 total yards, and of those 269 total yards, 28 rushing yards allowed on the day. That is next to nothing. The Colts right now have the number 1 rated defense against the pass, the number 4 against the run, and the number 1 overall defense in the NFL. And so Brian and I had talked in, the sort of season predictions episode of the show about the fact that the Colts D was supposed to be really good this year, and we didn't necessarily see that in week 1. Well, for the past few weeks now, we have seen the defense that was rumored to be there before the season began. We have seen a defense that is coming up with clutch plays. Their 7 interceptions leads the NFL right now. Really just all around great effort in terms of shutting down other teams at this point and being a defense that is feared because you know that they could pick six you at any time. You know they can get a turnover at any time. This is now a defense that teams are really going to have to think about and will alter game plans coming into games. And if this consistency stays that way, boy, does that take a lot of pressure off of Phillip Rivers. I mentioned that he was 16 of 29, which was by far his least accurate passing day so far. Now, granted, he threw no interceptions, so that's good. He didn't turn the ball over. But 190 yards, a touchdown, 16 to 29 is the one that kind of jumps out because he had been pretty much the leader in completion percentage up until this point in the season. A lot of that, though, had to do with the very good coverage that receivers were getting on the Colts. The Bears defense was all over the Colts receivers. There were a lot of balls that against other teams would have been pretty easy catches and just were not against this team. And so I don't look at those numbers. Now, granted, I am obviously a Phillip Rivers apologist, but I don't look at those numbers and say that he had an awful day throwing the ball. There was some not great throws in there, but there were also throws that were just really contested. And so 16 to 29, 190 yards, again, did not turn the ball over. But when you look at the defense that they have right now, Rivers throwing for 200 yards and a touchdown or 2 touchdowns can be enough, especially with their rushing attack. It can be enough in a lot of games this year for the Colts to win. And I think that just takes so much pressure off of Rivers to not have to put up 300 yards, to not have to throw the ball 45 times in the game. Granted, that's going to happen at some point again this year, but just in general, for him to be able to know that he can pick his spots and they can, they can strike big a couple of times, but other than that, just be consistent and really win games. And so they just looked, really good. Again, you look at that score, 19-11, doesn't feel like a big day, overall for the offense. But really, when you look at those 11 points for the Bears on defense, man, the Colts D is most definitely for real. It most definitely is here. And what's interesting this week is that the Colts are going in to face a Browns team that is, I think, finally starting to come together. They have a lot of weapons on that Browns team, of course, but I'm kind of in the camp that even though the Browns have been playing better lately, I'll believe it when they string a season together. So for me, I still feel like and the Colts are favored by 2.5 in this game, which is, that's a pretty close line. And so it should be a good matchup. I think this is another opportunity for the defense to really come out and give Baker Mayfield fits. And I see them doing that in this game. And then, of course, I don't think Rivers will be under 200 yards again in this game. I expect him to be more in the 250 yards range in this particular game. So I feel good about the Colts going into that Browns game. I think the Colts have really shown to this point now that they are a very well-rounded team and that this is what you're going to see for the rest of the year. So I'm excited about that. They've been a much more, other than that week one sort of disappointment, they've been a much more stable story than my Chargers have been. And so great win for the Colts last week. Really showed that their defense is now to be talked about, as elite. They're the number one defense in the league right now. And they overcame a Bears defense that was considered to be good as well. So great win by them. Let's talk about the Chargers, because last week you had Justin Herbert going up against Tom Brady, the guy who has haunted my fandom of football for however many years he's been in the league now. And once again, he ends up beating my Chargers. They lose to the Bucs 38-31 in a game that the Chargers really had control of for a lot of this game. And having watched Tom Brady for my entire life, because I live in Massachusetts, so I have to watch the Patriots all the time. They're the local game that's on TV all the time, even though they are a team that I have not been a fan of. And so, but just watching all those years with Brady, you don't let a Brady-led team hang around in a game. You have to put the game out of reach. You have to crush them if you're going to beat them. And the Chargers didn't do that. And really, it's a shame, because I feel like this was another case of overall, Herbert has a fantastic game, and it kind of gets wasted in a game that they should have won. And so things looked a little dicey out of the gate in the Chargers game. The Bucs came out and scored a touchdown. They went 75 yards down the field. Kind of wondering, oh boy, is it going to be a long day here for the Chargers? Nope. Chargers come right back. 53-yard touchdown pass from Justin Herbert. He made a couple of throws in this game that I think showed why the Chargers drafted him, and also showed why now, as we'll talk about in a minute, he is the starter for the Chargers. So they come right back and answer. Very next series, Tom Brady throws an interception, pick six, all the way back to the house. Now the Chargers are up 14-7, and momentum has fully swung in the Chargers' way. They trade punts for a little while, and then again, you have a nice pass from Justin Herbert on a drive that went 65 yards to Parham for a 19-yard touchdown. So now the Chargers are up 21-7, and into the second quarter we go. There's a missed field goal on the part of the Bucs. The Chargers come back, kick a field goal. Now we're up 24-7. And again, this is a drive that went 41 yards. I was not happy that we did not end up with a touchdown at the end of that drive, because again, knowing the team that we're facing, it's a new team for Tom Brady, but it is a team that he is leading. So they're going to come back. Like the score is not going to be 24-7. That's not where this game's going to end, but we're up 24-7. And no lead is safe, right? So what happens? We end up fumbling the ball on our own goal line, basically, in what I put on a coach's decision, because the Chargers get the ball back, and when they get the ball back, pardon my mouse clicks here, They get the ball back at 47 seconds left in the second quarter. They're up 24-7. Of course, as fans of the team, we want to see them take a shot, right? Because we're feeling good, because Herbert has been slinging the ball. We've been making big plays. We've had a couple of big strikes so far in this game, and the momentum is all in our favor. We're going to go into the half no less than 24-7 up on this team, right? It's basically almost a perfect half by the Chargers. So they call a run up the middle to Justin Kelly from the 9, I think they were on the 9-yard line. And it's a bad exchange, which was on Herbert because he never had the ball fully in his hands when he turned to hand it off to Justin Kelly. Kelly fumbles the ball. It is recovered by the Bucs. It is the absolute worst case scenario that you could imagine, other than them just scoring a touchdown on that immediate play, because then they turn around 3 plays later and they score a touchdown, and now it's 24-14. But that play, the reason I feel that that's a coaching decision there is, in my mind, you do one of two things there. The safe play is you just kneel. You just kneel down. And then go into the half 24-7, right? If you're going to run a play, if you're going to take a shot, then take a shot. Throw the ball. Put it in Herbert's hands and let him throw the ball down the field. At least try to get 15, 20 yards and see if you get some breathing room there. And if you do, then you're in business. And then you keep going. But at that point, to run it up the middle, to me, just didn't make any sense. And because exactly what happened, you give yourself a chance to happen, which is bad exchange. And then, it just marred a perfect first half, and it came back to bite them later on. So 24-14, we go up in the half, still feeling pretty good. But the Chargers get the ball coming out of the second half, and they go 3 and out. So then the Bucs come down, score a touchdown. Now it's 24-21. Chargers come back, miss a field goal. Bucs, again, are not playing for field goals. They're playing for touchdowns. They come down, score a touchdown. Now they're up 28-24. So by the time we get to, I'm just looking at the time here, the end of the third quarter, not even, like a minute and 40 left in the third quarter, we're now down 28-24. After being up 24-7 with less than a minute to go in the second quarter. That's how quickly one quarter completely changed the face of that game. Now, on the plus side of the Chargers, they came back with a bomb and scored a touchdown to go up 31-28, another bomb from Herbert. So he's going punch for punch with Brady in this game, and I think if there's something to be taken away from this game, it is that he did not shy away from the moment. And that's what I like about this kid. He's going to make the rookie mistakes. The bad exchange on the fumble was definitely a rookie mistake. You got to protect the ball in that scenario. But this kid can ball. And so they score another touchdown. They're up. Then they have to punt. Then, of course, the Bucs come back, score a field goal. They come back and they score a touchdown. They're up 35-31. They tack a field goal onto that. They're up 38-31. And then an interception basically ends the Chargers' hopes there. And so it was a game where, once again, they lose by 8 points or less, which they are the league leaders in that over the past few years. We're in another situation where we just can't pull it together in the fourth quarter. And I've talked all about offense this entire time. But really, I think what was exposed in this game, and it's mostly because of injuries, is that the Chargers defense can no longer put 4 quarters of really stout defense together. And what that basically means, and I think this is important to the situation that we have now, which is that Justin Herbert on Thursday was named the starter for the rest of the season, or the foreseeable future for the Chargers. And we'll talk about that in a second. But I think that in addition to the pressure that was mounting, not just from the fan base, but also from, I believe, the front office on Anthony Lynn to name Herbert the starter, I think what we're realizing now is that the Chargers defense has been so devastated by injuries that even though that we're getting some great individual performances out of that defense still. Bosa's been playing hurt. He's questionable going into this week. If he's out, that's killer against the Saints. And so the defense is so banged up that this is a different team than we started the year with. When we started the year, the game plan was we're going to have a great defense. We need Tyrod Taylor to manage the game. And if we do kind of what the Bucs did, kind of what the Colts did in this past week, if we win a game 19-11, if we do enough just to eke out a win, the defense is always going to keep the other team down. And so we're going to be able to not score a ton of points, but still win games. I think what we're seeing now is that for the Chargers to have any hope for the rest of this season, they're going to have to put up 30 points a game or more. They're just going to have to sling it. And their quarterback is going to need to be able to put up 300 plus yards a game and throw the ball 35 times a game. That's a lot to put on a rookie quarterback, but if I'm looking at Justin Herbert or Tyrod Taylor, and I'm saying I need 30 points a game, from a lot of it from our passing game, right? You have to go with Herbert. It's a different team now. It's what is needed from this team is different now. You don't need a guy who's going to manage the game anymore, because as of right now on paper, the Chargers are going to lose a lot of games this season. The only hope they have of winning is to start lighting it up on offense. And so you got to go with Herbert in that situation. And I think, again, in this game against the Buccaneers, what you saw is that the Chargers defense, it wears down. They start really getting loose in the fourth quarter. They can't stop anybody. The whole bend but don't break that we might see earlier in the game, where they're holding teams to field goals, or they're, managing to stop a team even though they creep into Chargers territory. By the time the second half rolls around, teams are rolling on us. And you just look at the points that the Bucs put up in that second half against the Chargers. Like, we cannot expect our defense to be getting big stops in clutch moments anymore. We cannot expect our defense to be consistently keeping other teams out of the end zone. It's not going to happen with these injuries. If this defense was healthy, different story. But the defense that we have right now and the lack of depth that we have right now because of all those injuries, it's on the offense now. The offense has to go out and score points every time down the field and not field goals. So that's kind of my take on where the Chargers season is at right now. And then, of course, Anthony Lynn, comes out and says this week that Herbert's going to be the starter for the rest of the season. I think as fans, part of us wanted that, right? Because this kid is exciting and he has been doing some really amazing things. He's making throws. He made throws in this game that you're just, there's a lot of quarterbacks in the league that can't make those throws. And so it's exciting. It's also freaking heartbreaking to see Tyrod Taylor's starting spot be taken away from him in this way. And we talked about this a little bit last week, but the idea of a quarterback losing, or anybody on the team losing their job because of injury, compounded by the fact that this is an injury that was caused by the medical staff of the Chargers, is just absolutely brutal. And I think I said last week, but I've been kind of wrestling with this all week, I still would have liked to have seen Tyrod have an opportunity to come out and be the starter still, at least for a game or two, when he's healthy. And he's returned to practice, I think, this week. I would like to have seen him get a chance to show that he could do the things that would need to be done in order for the Chargers to be able to win. Like I just said, now we need a quarterback that's going to be able to put 30 points up on the board. It would be nice to have Tyrod have the chance to show that he could do that, because I'm sure he would tell you that he could do that, right? And so we talk about him as a game manager. We talk about him as, someone who's not going to turn the ball over and is going to, let defense win games for them and stuff like that. But he didn't even get the chance to prove whether or not that's an accurate depiction of him, right? And so that is really heartbreaking. And I'm worried about the chemistry of this team. And I'm worried about the effect that has on Anthony Lynn now, because he made such a strong statement in support of Tyrod that now he had to go back on his word. I mean, he had said unequivocally that when Tyrod Taylor's healthy, he is the starter of this team. And then he had to go back on that. And that, even though it's the right move in terms of winning football games, I don't think there's any doubt right now that Herbert has shown that he gives you the best opportunity to put points on the board, and that's going to have them in more games. But man, you have a locker room now that looks at their head coach who made a strong statement and had to go back on it, even if a lot of those guys in the locker room want Herbert to be the starter, right? You have Tyrod Taylor, who I can't imagine that his relationship with Anthony Lynn is going to recover from that. Anthony Lynn said he didn't take it well, but he took it like a pro, which is, from everything we've seen from Tyrod Taylor, is exactly what you'd expect him to take it like a pro. He's been freaking awesome in terms of being a leader for that team. He's still a captain on that team. And so, but I can't imagine that doesn't completely fracture his relationship with Anthony Lynn moving forward. Is that a situation where Tyrod gets traded from the Chargers before the end of the season? I think that's going to depend on how that locker room holds together, and we know that winning fixes a lot of things. So if the Chargers can come out this week and pull off a victory on Monday Night Football against the New Orleans Saints, that's going to cure a lot of ills in terms of any chemistry issues that are sort of coming up. If they lose another one and Herbert still doesn't have a win as a starting quarterback, you're going to see some second guessing. If Herbert plays poorly in this next game, you're going to see a lot of second guessing around that. And you may even see him get yanked at some point because he's the starter now. But if he's not winning games, there's no reason Tyrod Taylor can't go back in there. And so I don't think this quarterback controversy is over by any stretch of the imagination. Having a quarterback controversy is not something you want to have for your team. I feel awful for Tyrod Taylor, and I feel bad for Justin Herbert because he's done nothing but come in and show that he is ready for the big time. He's done nothing but come in and say all of the right things when he's being interviewed and asked a million questions about this, about Tyrod, about the coach, about him, about all this kind of stuff. He's done just an incredible job with it. So, but to have his sort of start tainted by the fact that he was starting because of this situation that happened with Tyrod on the team, that's tough. I mean, in the history books, that's not, 5 years from now, we're not still going to be talking about that, but it's just not the start I think he or anybody else imagined in terms of like how he won the starting role. I imagine that he would have figured that if the team wasn't playing well and Tyrod got pulled, he would go in and demonstrate his ability to be the starter for that team. So it's not the ideal beginning for him. And it's definitely not the ideal ending for Tyrod in terms of his time as the starter. So we'll just have to see how that plays out. It's just a really unfortunate situation for Tyrod Taylor. And if there is an opportunity for him to start somewhere else in the league, I'd love to see him get the opportunity to do that and have a fresh start, especially if he's healthy. I also would still like his leadership on this team. I think there's a lot of stuff that he can teach Justin Herbert in terms of preparation, in terms of game management, in terms of picking your spots, in terms of knowing this offense. Like, it's essentially like having another coach on the sideline. So if their relationship can be okay, and given how professional Tyrod is, I don't doubt that it can. I think there's still a lot of benefit to him being here to help Justin Herbert develop as a starting quarterback. So yeah, I mean, that's really the reason that I wanted to get an episode out today, even though Brian and I couldn't record together, was just that this whole situation with Justin being named the starter now is huge, and it's going to change the face of this season moving forward. Now they're going to face the New Orleans Saints, who are favored by 7.5 in this game, and that's a pretty big favorite in this game. I don't think there's a lot of people expecting the Chargers to go on the road against the Saints and Drew Brees on Monday Night Football and win this game. But holy moly, is this an opportunity to really cement the Justin Herbert era for him to come out and just be great on Monday Night Football. I really hope that happens. Win or lose for the Chargers, I really hope that he once again has a game where he plays really well. And man, every game so far, he's had that at least one rookie mistake that he's made. I would love to see this be the game that he turns the corner and just, for his part, plays a near flawless game, whatever happens for the final score. I just think it would be great for him to get that. Now, keep in mind, the guys that he started his career against, Mahomes, Brady, Drew Brees, it's unbelievable. So if there's any way that the Chargers can pull out a win on Monday night, and I feel like if they go for it, this is the other thing too, just to kind of look ahead and again, talk about this turning point on the season. Like, not only do we need a quarterback now who can put 30 points on the board in a game, we need a game plan to put 30 plus points on the board in a game. This team can no longer be about going out and scoring 20 points and hoping that their defense is going to hang in it. This team now has to be aggressive, and that's going to mean more mistakes. That's going to mean more interceptions. It's going to mean more turnovers because this kid is a rookie, but I feel like you got to put the pedal to the metal now. Like, we have to take a page out of the Super Bowl era Saints book. We have to take a page out of the Dan Fouts era playbook, where it is like, we are going out to score 30 plus points a game. We're going to throw for 300 yards a game, and we're going to look for opportunities on every drive for the big play. And if they can start putting more pressure on other teams' defenses by really just being nonstop aggressive, maybe that'll light a little fire on the defensive side of the ball for the Chargers. And they can be aggressive too. And they can go like Kenneth Murray, who has been a tackling machine so far this season for the Chargers. It's time to put him in more situations. And I think Gus Bradley talked about this, but it's time to put him in more situations to have a big impact and make some game-changing plays. We're going to have individual guys on the defense now, like, take it up to another level, because this defense as a whole is just so banged up. So, yeah, we have to be aggressive on all fronts. Like, let's be exciting even if we're losing, as opposed to let's try not to lose games, which I feel is, if there's one knock I have on Anthony Lynn as a head coach, it is playing not to lose. You got to play to win. And you got to pick your spots, and you got to take big swings. And so I'm hoping that this really is the start of a new chapter for the Chargers. Like, what they thought they had going into this season, what they thought they were going to do going into this season, all of that is gone now. This is a team that has to make big plays to win. And hopefully they just come out of the gate this week. They did it last week against the Bucs. Big plays, big downfield throws, big home runs. Let's make that the norm now. Let's just make that the identity of this offense, is that we're going for big plays now. And so I'm excited. I'm excited to see what Herbert's going to be able to do. I'm excited to see if this lights a fire under the team. And I'm really excited for them to get a big win against a big-time team. And that can happen this week against the New Orleans Saints. And so we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. But super interesting week. And again, not to give short shrift to the Colts at all. I mean, the Colts, we cannot overstate how impressive and well-rounded this team feels right now. The Colts just have to keep doing what they're doing, and they're going to win a ton of games, and they're going to be in the playoffs this year, and they could be a Super Bowl contender. So I am over the moon for Phillip Rivers right now, because he is in a situation where all the tools are there. Yeah, they've had some injuries at wide receiver. Yes, they've had some injuries at running back, but they still have a lot of weapons on that team, and the defense is amazing. So he has a real opportunity to win a Super Bowl if this team continues to play the way that they're playing. And that is, I'm not going to say too much more about that because I don't want to jinx it, but I'm super excited for him, and I'm excited for the way that the Colts are playing. And I know Brian's like over the moon about that too. So, but you know, for me this week, it's about getting the Chargers into the win column and having them start to turn their season around. Do I expect them to make the playoffs at this point? I mean, I don't know about that. They're 1-3. I don't think anything lower than 10-6, makes the playoffs here this year. So for me, they got 3 losses to spread out over the rest of the season. This week's going to start to determine whether or not they are a different team, a different dynamic, and if we can expect them to creep up toward 10 wins this year. So we shall see. But the Colts are already on that track, so they just need to keep going. All right, I've babbled long enough. that is going to wrap up this episode of the Bolts and Colts podcast. The last thing that we usually do on the show is just have a quick sort of fantasy update. Both Brian and I won last week in our fantasy league. We are both 2-2, and the leaders in the league are 3-1. So we're right back in it after a rough start. I started 0-2, I think. And so it was not looking good to begin with. But I did pick up Herbert for my fantasy team this week. I actually have Herbert and Phillip Rivers on my fantasy team because I play more with my heart than I do with my head. But we'll see. Definitely going to be this is a pivotal week in the fantasy football league to see if we can either break into the top tier of our league or we kind of fall back toward the back end of the pack. So we shall see what happens. But everybody out there who's given this show a listen, we really appreciate it. Brian will be back next week, and hopefully we'll have 2 great wins to talk about. So thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you soon.